Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello, and welcome to the program. I was wildly paging through my Twitter feed. By the way, big shock. That plane did not hit the Mediterranean water more than 3 seconds before Donald Trump started tweeting about, "You see, this is a dangerous world. We need to get tough." I'm telling you, terrorist attacks are the thing. This one isn't timed right, but closer to the election, this could absolutely give him a ticket to the White House. There is no doubt about it. And that is something so out of our control that, I guess if you believe in prayer, start praying. Incredible. He was on it immediately. By the way, a plane falling out of the sky and terrorism by assumption of Muslim terrorism is about the only thing that can knock Donald Trump off CNN and MSNBC. And until I don't understand why they've gotten to the point where they can only cover one story at a time. What's that about? Hours and hours of election, numbing hours and hours of election. And then a plane comes out of the sky. Now we've got hours and hours of repetition of the same, don't know much, but here's what we know, and hours and hours. Whatever happened to being able to give people a whole bunch of news? And while the plane came out of the sky, here are a million other things that are happening on this earth that you should know about. When did news stop reporting news? When did it decide it was just going to do, it was almost, it's like gotten into a soap opera now. It's just one story. And you stay at it, and you repeat, and you can leave the room for weeks, come back, and pick right up where you left off. When the hell did that happen? I'll tell you when it happened. It happened when they saw their ratings were going up. So, to hell with journalistic credibility and responsibility, right? It just drives me crazy. And a good morning to you. Well, it turns out the last time, the game before last night's game, the last game here in Pittsburgh with Tampa Bay, that game, I was such a wreck after that. It went into overtime after it ended because it was so tight that I couldn't sleep. Now, last night, I slept just fine. And that game last night, I didn't have to end it with this heart pounding, right? Because, well, we had won the game before that buzzer sounded. And so I really liked that win last night, better than the last win here, because it allowed me to rejoice and then go to sleep. I'm sorry for you folks who can't get into hockey at all, because, man, it is one hell of an exciting game. It's ridiculously exciting. And unlike football, it doesn't stop every 2 seconds. Speaking of football, do you see the new superintendent of public schools here in Pittsburgh is a former NFL football player. Didn't last long. Guess he was with Seattle, then he was with Indiana, and then he had to go north of the border to the Canadian League, which is never a good sign. And I think he said to hell with that and then went and got his doctorate. I hope he's a better superintendent than he was a professional football player. But, man, that's one imposing-looking gentleman. So, yesterday, a caller called and said that he'd come upon this thing on the internet that just said it all, that it was some redneck liberal. And he was doing a rant. And he couldn't believe how great this was, or blah, right on, dead on. And then he sent me a link to it, and Clarence sent me a link to it, and somebody else sent me a link to it. And I got to tell you, you got to check this guy out. This is some funny, wonderful stuff. I'm not sure. I think there's a lot of people out there who call themselves liberal rednecks. And in fact, I even think that there's a comedy tour that some of these guys go on. But this particular liberal, he lives in, I think he said, Kentucky, maybe, or Tennessee. And, you know, he sounds bad as man, he looks right, and he's looking right at the camera, and he is so taking apart his neighbors and the rest of his, you know, the southern family that he has to live with and within. It's just great. It's just great. If you're an atheist, you'll love him because he really trashes religion. He trashes Republicans. And he does it in such an insider kind of a way that it is a riot. The guy who I was watching is named Trey Crowder, and it's Trae. Check him out, seriously. Trae. Crowder, Trey Crowder, a liberal redneck, smart cookie. So I thank Mike who brought him up and introduced him to me. He is worth, in 1 2-minute bit that he does, because he does these quick bits, in 1 2-minute bit. He is better than 5 hours of listening to those friggin' talking heads on CNN and MSNBC, and I'm sure Fox News. I mean, you can turn your brain to mush. Why is it that the funny guys and gals, when I say guys, that's a to me that's male and female, but why is it the funny people are the smartest? Why is that? Yeah, just last night on Celebrity Jeopardy, okay? So they had 3 contestants. They were Jonathan Capehart, who is a Washington Post columnist and one of the talking heads you see on TV. He's very smart. And then they had a woman. Who the hell was she? Oh, she was the morning host for CNN alongside, I guess, Andrew. Is it Andrew Cuomo? She was one of them. I think that's what she was. And then there was Louis C.K. He wiped the floor with them. He knew. Bang, 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 bang. He knew. Don't worry, whatever it was, he knew it. And it's not like the other 2 were idiots, although the woman, mean, I thought this is funny because the woman who is on a show in which she doesn't quite have to be a journalist. The morning thing is more of a sort of personality driven. You just got to be perky and not a total fool and blah, 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 and add to the conversation. But man, she didn't know some really basic stuff. And I thought, and that's a person on the network news channel. I can't remember what she didn't know, but it was like stuff she should. It was about like political things, or it was about American history. And I thought, oy. But she looked like a Barbie doll, so it's okay. But where would we be without Louis C.K.? Where would we be without John Oliver? Where would we be without, and we need Jon Stewart? Where would we be without these, Fallon and Kimmel, and I'm forgetting some that like Wilmer, who just like bang, get it, and educate, because you don't get it in the news anymore. So as news became entertainment, entertainers, some comedians, began doing the news. Saw a vacuum created and went into it. And in their inimitable style, they have done what journalism, broadcast journalists, have surrendered. Namely, their credibility. They have done their jobs. Really is something. And also, I mean, it says, we're living in this crazy time. Well, that's another indication we're living in a crazy time, when the news is entertainment and the entertainers are desperately trying to educate you. Everything's sort of upside down. And here's a great email I got from Allison in this regard. If Trump is elected president, I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to know how Dorothy felt when Toto pulled back that curtain. I think they might be too out of it to even acknowledge that. I don't know. Allison goes on. I still believe, and this is an interesting point, I still believe, she says, he doesn't want to be president. And he is really the only one who can stop it. I believe, she says, he's the one who provided the Washington Post with the tape that he now denies is him. That's the tape of John Barron or John Miller, these made-up things that he does. So Allison is saying, I bet he gave the tape to them because he thought it'll undercut him. And you stop and think about it. Someone else told me this too. This was an idea floating around. As far as we know, although, believe me, tapes can proliferate, 2 people had access to that tape. He did, if he were taping it. He's the one who made the call. If he were taping it, he did. And the only other one was on the other end with the reporter he was talking to, who at the time was a reporter for People magazine. She did not put that tape out. Which leads you to, well then, maybe he did. Now, if he did, Allison could be onto something, that he's trying to put out damaging things in hopes, but I can't see, I just can't see his ego allowing that. And the other thing, Allison, is that he knows more than we seem to, that nothing sticks to him, nothing harms him, nothing hurts him. When you have a reputation as this like lunatic, blowhard, well, if you send out things, look at this, he's a lunatic. He's a lunatic blowhard. And everyone would just say, yeah, he's a lunatic blowhard, but he's our lunatic blowhard, and we still think he's going to fix it. Nothing sticks. Anyway, Allison, I'll stop. I'll go on to you. If he loses, who's he going to blame it? Oh, come on. He'll have plenty of people to blame it on. It's a rigged system. If he loses, who's he going to blame it on? And could his ego handle a loss? This will be the most vulgar and vile campaign in history. Well, I think that goes without saying. And then Allison says this. I have listened to Bernie Sanders for years on the Thom Hartmann show, and I do not recognize him anymore. Like Trump, he's gotten caught up in the excitement and do you think when he got in, like when Trump got in, either of these guys thought they'd be some of the last people standing? I mean, there's 3 people standing. 2 of them are people who were whose candidacies were laughed at. So you got to figure that both Trump and Sanders are experiencing somewhat of the same thing. A measure of disbelief, but with huge, huge ego massage. So she sees Sanders seeming different, and she says if he wants to continue to talk about his policies, his programs for America, then he should continue. But he needs to stop attacking Hillary. Well, he's not going to. And in fact, there is a rather long piece in today's New York Times about how he is not only going to continue attacking Hillary, he's going to ratchet it up. He is going to fight a no-holds-barred campaign in California. He's going to try to take California away. He is going to try to rack up as many delegates as he possibly can, and he's got a lot, but she's got more. And he's doing this so that when he goes to Philadelphia for that convention, he has huge power and a voice and leverage. And what he's not doing is he's not looking beyond the convention. And in that regard, he's harming the Democrats' chances. There is no doubt about it. And I want to wring his neck right now because it's bigger than you, Bernie. She does not need any impediments put in her way. She's going to limp into that convention. She's going to limp in. She's going to look like a really weak candidate. And the Republicans, I said this yesterday, it could be the Democrats are going to be the most disunited party. And if we are, it'll be because of Bernie Sanders' inability, refusal to educate his passionate followers. And you know, I have said, man, Bernie says so much of what I've been saying for a long time. I mean, in many ways, I'm a soulmate, but I'm also somebody who does not want to see Donald Trump in the White House, okay? And that beats everything. And I just want to remind everybody now that Bernie Sanders doesn't give a hoot about the Democratic Party. Okay? Even though he's running to be the standard bearer of that party, he isn't. I'm still confused about this. Did he become a member? He's not a member. If you see him, if you look at how he's put down in the Senate rolls, it doesn't say Democrat. He caucuses with the Democrats, but he's a socialist or an independent, whatever. He ain't a Democrat. And so expecting him to care about the Democratic Party's nominee, if it ain't him, is, it turns out, going too far. So Bernie, add Bernie to the people who are willing to destroy something to save it. He's willing to destroy, take down the Democratic Party, much like Trump is doing with the Republicans, so that he can save it, so that he can reconstitute it to be more of a social Democratic Party. Now, a lot of people will say, actually, I'd get on board with that. That's a laudable goal. But if, in getting to it, you put Donald Trump in the White House, I think you've made a miscalculation of just huge proportion. Because the damage that can be done in 4 years. What? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said something. With a Republican government, Congress, White House, and packing the Supreme Court till your grandchildren are grown-ups. And we're not even talking about foreign policy. We're not even talking about the economy. We're not even talking about our standing in the world. I can see no greater threat to my idea of what America can be than that America would elect Donald Trump to be the president of this country. To me, it is it's criminal. And anybody who is aiding and abetting the forces that would put Donald Trump in the White House will have that on their consciences for the rest of their lives if they've got them. This is bigger than voting for Nader now and screwing up that election. I don't know why people don't learn to look beyond whatever it is they want and see if their refusal to have a broader view does not put them in a place that they do not want to be. A place of great danger to our planet, to our world, to our nation, to our souls, for God's sake. I'm pleading with you, Bernie people. You know, I felt the burn. But get real. Right now, all he is doing is helping Donald Trump. That's all he's doing. He already has a huge standing at the Democratic Convention and a huge voice. He has already shown that he can beat Hillary Clinton, because he has, and he's continued to. But unfortunately, she has gotten more votes, even with the superdelegates taken away. So please, God, Bernie, what are you doing? Read the article in the New York Times if you want. It's unsettling. Unsettling. Okay. I'll cease and desist. Hey, the Pope. I just saw this on Twitter. The Pope has condemned bloodsuckers. His term. I love this Pope. He's got a little Trump in him, because he doesn't speak like a Pope's supposed to speak. He just goes right to the heart. The Pope condemns bloodsuckers. Who are the bloodsuckers to the Pope? Oh, employers, corporations, bad ones, but far too many of them. He went after bloodsuckers who exploit workers. We were talking about that yesterday, too. Which sort of brings us to this rule that Obama, trying desperately to get something done without the rest of the government functioning around him, has directed, as Bill Maher would say, new rules. Time for new rules. And he's changed the formula for how overtime is given in this country. There's I don't know what the original act was, Fair Labor Standards Act or something. It's ringing a vague bell in my head. But it was a federal law that was put in the New Deal era. It was in the 30s in this country. That's getting close to almost 100 years ago, that New Deal. And the law said that if you're an employer and you have a person working for you that works over 40 hours a week, then you gotta pay them for every hour over 40, not just their usual hourly rate, but that plus half, time and a half. I remember the first time that I encountered what these bloodsuckers do. And it happened when I worked at WTAE-TV. Not that I'm calling the people there at the time bloodsuckers, but this is what all of them did. I remember the excitement on a young woman's face in the newsroom who was not on air. She was behind the scenes. I believe at the time she was a assignment editor or a assistant producer, not an entry-ish level job, but where you work your tail off. And I swear this young woman, was working 60, 70 hours a week. And she was paid by the hour. And she was getting overtime because they had to give it to her. And then she got a promotion. And she was so excited. She got promoted. She was now a position that they called, back at the TV station, a management level position. So now she was a manager. And as a manager, she no longer qualified for overtime. So they gave her a salary, which was maybe a few bucks beyond what she had made without all the overtime. That she ended up making less. Let's just cut to the chase. She made a lot less because what they had done is put her in a position where she was no longer eligible to get the money for all the hours she worked. So now she was working just as hard and making less. But she had the bragging rights of being able to say, well, I'm a manager, as if. They did it all the time. I've seen it happen here. I've seen it happen. This is what they do to screw a worker. This is just one of the little tricks in their bag. And the way the rules were is if anybody worked more than 40 hours a week and they make less than $23,666 a year, you've got to pay them overtime. That's what's been there. So I guess what a lot of places did is they just they started paying that same person $24,000 a year, but they made him a manager and they lost all the overtime that they used to get because they always worked more than 40 hours a week. So what the Obama administration has wisely done is taken that threshold of $23,000 a year, which over it the employer doesn't have to give a person overtime. And he said, we're doubling that, pretty much, doubling it. So now the new rules, which will take effect in December of this year, raise that threshold to $47,000. So if you're making under that, then you're going to be eligible and, in fact, have to be paid overtime. Now, you know what the Republicans always say about this. You're going to cost people jobs. The employers will just throw these people out. No, they won't. These people are already working their tails off. Those are jobs that have to be done. What might happen is they will keep a person at 40 hours and not do all that overtime, which means what? They'll have to hire somebody else. Maybe there'll be more jobs created. Or what else could happen? Yeah, they could lay people off and force the poor souls who work for them to work 5 times harder. But there comes a breaking point, guys. And if we ain't at it, I don't know where the breaking point would be. Anyway, this amounted to a pay raise for millions and millions and millions of Americans. If Donald Trump is elected, he will get rid of that the first day he's in office. With a bunch of whole other stuff. People will suffer. It used to be about 7% of Americans were getting overtime with the old threshold, and now there's going to be closer to 30% of Americans. That is a huge lift for a lot of Americans. Republicans, of course, are going nuts because anytime the bloodsuckers are told they have to stop or they have to, or new regulation comes in that doesn't allow them to suck as much blood out of their workers as they were doing, Republicans go batshit. I thought I'd sent this to myself, and I know I did, but somehow it didn't show up. And so forgive me, I don't have all the detail, but there was an amazing story of a Republican senator who died recently. You might remember the name Senator Bob Bennett. He was a senator from Utah. And he had pancreatic cancer, and he died, I don't know, last month or something? I can't remember. On his deathbed, he was in a hospital. He asked his family, who was there with him, are there any Muslims working? Are there any Muslims working in the hospital? Now, you might think he's probably full of morphine and this and that. That's such an odd question. But he was told, this is where I didn't read the whole story, so I can't give you. But he must have been told, well, I'm sure, there got to be some Muslims in the hospital, probably a lot of the doctors. And he said, please, can somebody bring some Muslims in here? I don't know if Muslims were brought in. What I do know is the reason he was asking is he told his family he needed to apologize to them for what his party and his party's nominee were doing to them. You know, when you get close to seeing your maker, you start looking for ways to, grease the skids so you're going to heaven if you're a believer. This guy must have been. And he wanted to make an apology to Muslims on behalf of his party because this was his party. That's all I can tell you because I didn't then keep on reading. But when it comes to these deathbed apologies, Republicans are famous for them. As they get closer to those, that comeuppance, and if they are a believer, they get scared. The most famous one, of course, was Republican political wizard and strategist Lee Atwater. You remember him? Goes back a while. Young man when he died, too. But he famously helped Ronald Reagan get elected, pretty much helped perfect the whole Southern strategy. He was a race baiter. He did such horrible stuff in the employ of the Republican Party. He was their wizard. He was their Karl Rove at the time, Lee Atwater. And then he ended up on his deathbed when I think he might have even still been in his 30s or early 40s. And oh boy, did he make mea culpas left and right about what he had done in the employ of the Republican Party. Okay. Nobody's talking to me today. That's okay. That's okay. Well, I don't... It's okay. I'm increasingly seeing stories that are unsettling to me. I have told you I think Trump is bringing to America a kind of American fascism. It doesn't have to be goose steps, it doesn't have to look like what German fascism looked like. And I think my fear of Trump is well-founded. And as I said, talk to a Holocaust survivor. There aren't many around anymore. They're in their late 80s, they're in their 90s, and they all say the same thing watching Trump. I never thought I'd see this again. Okay? Caller, go ahead, please.
Hello, Lynn.
Yeah.
Hey, Lynn, Mike Cullen.
Hi, Mike.
I'm the one that sent you the video.
Yeah, I love that guy.
I do, too. Hey, Lynn, here's the way I feel. I feel like, I always tell people this. I'll be 55 next month. And I'm not joking. I think I'm de-evolving. And I mean, I'm shrinking. My hair's falling out.
Yeah.
I'm losing my hearing. Like I mentioned before, I'm diminishing. And I that's okay. I'll admit I'm de-evolving back to a monkey. But I think as a society, we're afraid to admit that we're just monkeys, but we're de-evolving back. And it seems like every day I wake up and I hear the news. I talk to you, I talk to my cousin. I feel like I'm getting nicked every day with a knife. Not killed, just slowly bloodletted out. And until the election day, and then I'll be a skeleton because I just can't take all the information and news. It seems like every day we get more bizarre. I mean, how could Donald Trump get on the air and say that a plane fell from the sky? And he's already going to try to blame Hillary or maybe blame Obama, somebody in the Democratic Party,
right,
for this thing. And then, for some reason, our de-evolved society accepts it and believes it. I don't know what's going on.
Well, I think you do. I think you do understand.
We're de-evolving when people don't realize it, they're afraid to admit it?
Well, I'm just talking about you personally, that, you see what's happening. Just because things are getting condensed in a way, right? I think as we age, we condense. That does make us shorter. It makes we lose water. Our skin dries up. Things dry up, right? You condense. And I think, though, as we condense, things, when they condense, often then can reveal specific things. So things get clearer in a funny way when you're condensing.
And here's on a positive note, because I can't take all this stuff going on. I just read something on the internet that I think that's fascinating. They found out that the trees actually sleep.
Yes.
And they said, why the scientific finding that trees sleep at night is beautiful.
I know.
And I as I get older too, I appreciate more of nature.
Right.
And I'm a deist, so I don't believe in the Bible or any revealed books revealed books from anybody. I don't think God spoke to anybody. But I can see the beauty. But I believe there's a creative power that rules the earth and rules the universe, and I appreciate that more because it's beyond and above me. And I just realize that us as humans,
we're nothing.
Just so limited and so
we are
stupid.
Yeah, well, but we're also capable of it's like we are so stupid, and yet we're capable of soaring with with the better angels of our
we have the potential to.
We do, and
but there's a lot of good in the world, and a lot of people doing positive things. But it just seems like it's overshadowed by the selfishness and greediness of the corporations, and like you said, the workers always being put down and subjugated to slavery, and the rich it's just getting And for some reason like I said, I used to work at Eaton Park years ago, and this is before healthcare, before Obamacare and all this stuff. And I would tell the workers, we need a healthcare policy where everybody's covered, because my wife was covered. I was covered under my wife's insurance policy. And I say, why don't you guys want to have health care for everybody? And the workers would argue with me and fight with me and tell me no, because somebody, either somebody who's lazy, or maybe for the racist, they'll say a black person who doesn't deserve it, shouldn't get it. So they'd rather spite that other person so nobody gets anything, a scorched earth mentality, rather than saying, well, we look at the system and try to distribute a little bit of the wealth to everybody, a little bit, so we all had a little bit of health care coverage, so we're all covered. And if you want to buy a little bit more, okay, that's understandable. You have a little bit more money. It's like a car. Everybody would get the basics, but if you wanted to buy a little bit of additional luxury, that's fine. People could do that.
There are a lot of other countries in the world, and a lot of them employ a system that seems to work pretty damn well. And it's universal health care.
Yes.
And it's it's just that single payer. We could do that, but we won't, because we're exceptional, and we can't tolerate a system that doesn't allow the big, rich corporations, insurance companies, the so-called nonprofit hospitals, the doctors, and the pharmaceutical companies from lining their pockets even more. You can't have a system that doesn't allow them to take more money.
Exactly.
All right, well, go away. You're depressing me.
I know. Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
Bye, Lynn.
Bye. So I was saying, ask a Holocaust survivor. So, it's true. Never thought I'd see this again, they say. And they're talking about a tone. They're talking about little buzzwords. They're talking about the fact that the white supremacists recognize immediately who Trump is, and they love him. They can't believe it. They can't believe it. They love the nativist, nationalist stuff. I told you that even America First, my God, that harkens back to America's neo-Nazis before we entered World War II. it is mind-blowing. The problem is people don't know their history. They don't know anything. Oh, they know, as I said, they know whatever they're being fed on television or something, but God help us. So I got to tell you, Breitbart is this right-wing news operation. And they're the ones when that female reporter of theirs got supposedly manhandled by Trump's manager, which I didn't see as a manhandling because, again, this is me coming out of a rough and tumble 70s, 80s in the world. If you're in the middle of a scrum around a presidential candidate and somebody grabs your arm and pulls you back, well, that's part of the reality of being in the scrum. And so she made a big to-do and lodged a criminal charge, and the police, and I thought that was bullshit. Anyway, Breitbart refused to stand by her own employer, and the reason was everybody felt that Breitbart was in Trump's pocket. Trump had courted the guys who head Breitbart even before he threw his hat in the ring. And there is a sense in journalistic circles that Breitbart is Trump in large part. So it has been noted that Breitbart's headline the other day it was a column about Bill Kristol, who is one of the most loathsome characters I know. William Kristol, he's a Republican jerk who you see on, he's a talking head commentator all the time throughout the Bush era, just despicable. He's one of the neocons, William Kristol. But he's a big never Trump person. And Breitbart doing a story on him and his refusal to drop the attempt to undercut Donald Trump's candidacy. Here was their headline: Republican spoiler, renegade Jew. He's Jewish. How does that come in to a headline? Well, see, it's these little things. Wait a minute. Why is his Jewishness being put out there? These are troubling little signs. If you're not, if you're not somebody who is part of a people, if you're not black, if you're not an illegal immigrant, if you're not gay, if you're not a Jew with a memory or of history, it's hard for you to have the sensitivity that people from groups that have been on the receiving end of horror simply by being a member of a group, a despised group. When you start seeing in media the calling out of group members, so that Kristol is called a spoiler, renegade Jew, that gets your attention. I mentioned earlier that a reporter had done a story, which I've never seen, a woman reporter had done a story about Trump's wife and had gone back to Slovenia or wherever the hell she's from, and from the village she came from or something. The story talked about her family, and apparently Melania hated it, really didn't like it. And she went on Twitter or Facebook and complained about it. And then this reporter was on the receiving end of death threats, but not just death threats, swastikas, pictures of herself with swastikas on her face, and being called out as a Jew, blankety blank blank, and even the Jew wasn't the word used. And I was blown away by that because, first of all, how did they even know she was Jewish? I didn't know she was. I don't even think she has that Jewish name. Melania was asked about it the other day. And did she condemn the people who are doing that? No, she did not. She said, I wouldn't do such a thing, she said, but they were provoked. So in other words, if they were provoked, that means the Jew provoked them to threaten her. This, again, is something there are historical precedents for. The little way this starts percolating up. I read a story the other day that I guess the organized Jewish community in this country, who I don't think necessarily represents Jews well, it's an establishment, like AIPAC. AIPAC, they are freaking out because even though Trump appeared before them and spoke, they have he won't really meet. There's talk that he doesn't seem to want Jews around. Okay, so this stuff is starting up. And guys, I don't know how I can tell you that I don't think that we're being crazy here. It's that dangerous. And I think he's that dangerous. And of course, things are subtle at first. Or you just sort of blow them off. Oh, well, I know the KKK has endorsed him, or I know the white nationalists love him. Oh, I know that guy who was a white nationalist is one of his delegates to the convention, but I guess he backed out once it became a story. But, yeah, all of this, if this doesn't tell you something about how serious a Trump presidency could be. He ain't openly targeting Jews. No. In fact, he's going after Muslims. First, they came for the Muslims. But I wasn't a Muslim. I didn't say anything. Then they came for the immigrants. But I wasn't an immigrant, so I didn't say anything. Then they came for pick the liberals, the commies, the socialists, the gays. They came for the transgendered. They came for the Jews. But I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't say anything. And then they came for me, and of course, there was nobody left. Here is what one person said who follows this kind of. That was probably from the Southern Poverty Law Center. I don't know. Bill Kristol, Republican spoiler, renegade Jew, is a headline that could appear on any neo-Nazi site like Stormfront. In fact, Stormfront, which is America's neo-Nazi site, has happily picked that Breitbart story up whole and run with it. So there used to be a pretty big gap between the sort of everyday crap that Breitbart spews and the internet's just openly white supremacist anti-Semitic sites. But thanks to Donald Trump, that pretty big gap is narrowing and shrinking. And now what's considered a mainstream operation, Breitbart, can have its stuff happily picked up and put in Stormfront, an organization that would be perfectly happy doing that and seeing the swastika replace the stars and stripes. Donald Trump, ladies and gentlemen. And for anybody who says, you're depressing me, I want to say this. Fine and dandy. Sorry you're depressed. There's sort of big fish to fry here. As I said, the globe itself is at risk. Even if Hillary's in, the globe is a goner with Trump. No environmental stuff will happen. Absolutely none. No regulation will happen. Absolutely none. Your Supreme Court will be, you can go through every regulatory agency. Those workers who just got a little bit of a lift from Barack Obama and the rule change will be pushed right back where they were. Women's right to control their own bodies. Forget it, ladies. It's amazing to me. I thought I knew this country. I knew it was divided, and I knew it was full of people who didn't do much thinking. But the fact that so many who are capable of thinking, are capable of thought, are refusing to do it and are just jumping on this bandwagon because there's something fun about blowing things up. That is really troubling. I was going to get into this Penn Hills thing. God almighty. Did you see Penn Hills School District? So there was a guy who was the business manager of the district. He went in when he was hired, I guess 4 years ago. Here's what can happen in 4 years. I've just been suggesting that within 4 years, Donald Trump could destroy everything. Here's a guy who has a job. His name is Richard Liberto, and he got this job overseeing the business stuff at the school district in Penn Hills. And he came in with a $4 million surplus in the kitty. When he was kicked out just a few months ago, he left a $19 million deficit in 4 years. And now, of course, you got the Auditor General looking at it saying he in his entire life has never seen the kind of malfeasance and probably criminal conduct. $22,000 here that never got in athletic fees, that never made it into anywhere, so somebody pocketed it. Stolen fuel up to $390,000 worth. Yeah, so. Oh, credit cards. I guess when he came in, only 4 employees were allowed to have credit cards from the district. Under this nitwit, nearly 24 cards were issued, and they weren't even, and one of those cards, it said, was authorized to be used by, quote, anyone in uniform. So if you put a badge on your head, on your shirt, or a cap, I don't know, was that a uniform? I don't even know where to start, the Auditor General says. This is insane. You know what's more insane? When Penn Hills threw this guy out in March, he got another job like that. Like that. He just moved over one school district. He was picked up and hired by the Wilkinsburg School District. Now, guys, we know the Wilkinsburg School District does not have a $4 million surplus for him to disappear. But they're a district in terrible trouble. And they hire a man who has just been fired by the neighboring district? What the hell's going on? Will you tell me, please? Okay, I'm done. Hey, here's what we do. The caller who said he's getting closer to nature as he ages. Yes. Take a walk. Look at this gorgeous spring. Breathe the wonderful air. And let this stuff go. Not that we shouldn't be paying attention, but you can't do it 24/7. You can't. We still got to live, right? Still got to live. We have got to stop Trump. We have got to. And you got to, if you have to collar some of these young Bernie people, and just start working on them. Don't scream at them. Don't scream at them, she said, screaming. Just carefully explain that there are bigger things going on here. Really big things. Okay, that's it for me. See you tomorrow.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.